This video is sponsored by Tech Wars Global Conflict. What's up, lore masters? In the last video, we discussed the rise of the Bajoran Nationalist Circle and, ultimately, the fall of the provincial government. That video is linked below, and if you want to be caught up, definitely check it out. Before I get into the siege of Deep Space Nine, let me address a few things that continue to crop up. Several people have argued that attempting to change the mind of a full-fledged Bajoran nationalist is a waste of time, as most wouldn't listen. First, I have personally observed people go from full-on toxic ideology to something more reasonable in their beliefs after being challenged. It did take a while, but it's possible. However, I've also observed, like many, that ultimately some become more entrenched and seemingly will never be able to change from who they are. Well, that's fine. That's really not a problem, honestly. If you go listen to my commentary, I was extremely specific and careful with my wording. Every time I discuss debating or arguing, I go out of my way to focus on confronting the ideas. The point never was to change the mind of the leadership of the circle, but just to present their arguments next to that of actual reasonable counterpoints and let the people decide. Ultimately, the circle is only as powerful as those who are willing to listen and follow them allow. Now, some of you did suggest that people can't be trusted and they have to be told what to think because they'll make the wrong choices. For those people, I'll include a link to China, may the Emperor continue to shine upon his most chosen kingdom, and Blizzard's YouTube channels, so that you can subscribe because you're at the wrong channel if you don't believe that ideas can change minds. Or freedom. Continuing on, I also want to address one thing that happens pretty quickly and just irks me. When the heroes realize that Cardassians are manipulating the events to destabilize the Bajoran system, Admiral Chakotay of Starfleet says the Prime Directive applies and that the Federation has to stay out of it even if the Cardassians won't. Fucking what? The original series, A Private Little War. TNG's The Klingon War. Arguably, Starfleet's intervention to assist Bajor, and everything you're about to do in the Dominion War itself is completely opposite of what Chakotay just said. I mean, are you kidding me? This is just utterly ridiculous. The only way this makes sense is if Chakotay is actually a changeling. But anyway, as I'm sure people will be asking, I'll talk about how I changed this entire thing at the end, so stay tuned. I'm just pointing out the flaws right now. Focusing on the episode itself, again we're looking at DS9's The Siege, for those trying to keep up. Deep Space Nine begins immediate evacuations of every non-Bajoran on the station once they realize the Bajoran military are on their way. It's telling that even Bajorans want to leave as well, though Leonalis gives a speech about Bajorans needing to stay strong and to take care of their own problems. Would have been nice if he did this before the Circle came into power, but whatever. In a way to skirt Starfleet's evacuation order, Sisko and many of the crew stay behind, with reason being they have to get rid of every piece of Starfleet equipment. I'm sure that's going to fly at his court-martial when they show how Starfleet officers staged a military engagement with Bajoran armed forces, so I don't think we'll worry about it anymore. Quark would be joining the insurrectionists due to his brother selling his ticket. Again, it's really interesting to see how Quark, Rom, and Nog change throughout the series and become heroes in their own rights, but they weren't anything of the sort at this point. Hey guys, this video is sponsored by Tech Wars Global Conflict, a game with giant humanoid robots, isometric PvP action. It's free to play and available on the Abyss platform. Not only is this game a sponsor, but I actually really enjoy it. You should check it out by clicking the link below. All that, and it's free. Supporting my sponsors supports the channel. Now let's get back into it. The Bajoran military boards and seemingly takes control of Deep Space Nine as the Starfleet elements that stayed hide and conduct a guerrilla war, as I've already alluded to. I actually really enjoy the general of the Bajoran military. He's not a stupid man, he's not someone that's jumping in without thinking. He doesn't twirl his mustache, he's just a guy who joined the wrong side and was swept into the wrong beliefs. He's doing his duty and thinking that what he's doing is the right choice. Unlike him, the second-in-command, Colonel Day, would be more your mustache twirler, only wanting to gain control and get rid of the alien scum. Maybe having to deal with Roy and Aeromass finally pushed him off the cliff. Having sabotaged the internal sensors, Sisko would keep trying to divide the Bajorans in order to capture them in small groups. The general would realize this was being attempted, but the Hackett boy wasn't having it, sending his people out and, of course, getting caught. Even Colonel Day himself would be captured, and Sisko gives him the message that the Cardassians are behind the circle and send him back to talk to the general. Unfortunately, it wouldn't be very much of a show if we had people who acted logically, and this warning is just ignored. When the Bajorans realize Starfleet personnel are hiding in shielded parts of the station, they begin to pump in nestazine gas. This forces Sisko to effectively do a Hail Mary, having his forces create a diversion so Leonalis can talk to the general. While all of this was occurring, Kira and Dax are able to get to the Council of Ministers and present the proof that the Cardassians were interfering in Bajoran internal affairs. This would of course discredit Minister Jaro and ultimately the Circle. To quote the episode, the Circle was broken. Here's a question though. Why did Sisko even engage in the siege of Deep Space Nine? With communications out, the most important piece of this was getting the message to the council members. We know that runabouts are extremely tough. We'll see them take on Jem'Hadar fighters in the future. They even admit as much in the episode, and yet can't find a way about getting one over to Bajor? If they are worried about putting civilians in harm's way, have the majority or all of the Starfleet personnel on one runabout and send that one. Sabotage DS9 so its weapons are temporarily out of commission, or just get out of range before the Bajorans arrive. Go to Bajor, show the evidence, and be heroes. And if there are too many civilians that they will put them in harm's way, I'm going to be frank here. Look, I am extremely critical of Starfleet for having families on warships, which apparently is somehow controversial to people. I guess civilian deaths just get them off or something, I don't know. But the reason I'm so critical is because it's unnecessary. We know that even now they still have family on board vessels. The USS Odyssey will unload non-essential personnel and families in a few seasons from this episode. However, sometimes it's something that you have to do that can't be avoided. It is extremely unlikely that Bajor could stop a runabout. The chances are so minute that you would have to say that them taking out a Starfleet vessel is a non-0% chance. That's how low it is. It's non-zero. You can't even put a number to it, it's so low. You take the runabout with as few civilians as possible and you stop this mess. The attempt to hold the station really doesn't feel like it would serve much point either. I suppose if I'm trying to bend so much my back might break, we could argue that perhaps Sisko felt the Bajorans would resist so much that it would result in casualties, and by limiting it to Kira and Dax while they defended the station, they had the best chance of getting no casualties. But that's a hell of a gamble, and I guess not out of the ordinary for Starfleet. Ultimately, the problem I have with this arc is its ending, and it relies too much on the Cardassians arming the Bajoran Circle. We are told through dialogue and action that the Circle is bad and wrong, but the only reason they are taken out is because of a hatred of the Cardassians. The ending tells us that Bajorans hate the Cardassians more than they hate the rest of us, so they'll just put up with us. So the bigoted people are good because they are less bigoted towards most other species. Just a good lesson. Inevitably, I'm always challenged on how I would change a story if I were writing it. After all, it's easy to break something down, not so easy to bring it back up. Okay, fair. So, I'm tasked with rewriting this and how I would do it. Now, I do have to keep the same message that the original story had. That is, bigotry and ethno-nationalism is bad, diversity and tolerance is good. So, everything up to the siege is great. As I said, I like the arc overall, and I just think they didn't have a good payoff in the end. So, we keep Leonalis, the growing tensions, all of it. The first two episodes barely change. In fact, I'm going to keep it so that Sisko and the others don't challenge the ideals. Now, looking at the episode, The Siege, instead of having Starfleet be made aware in an entire evacuation, I would have the Bajorans commit a surprise attack on DS9. The way this would happen is that the station would receive a request from a Bajoran military vessel to take on the General to discuss escalating tensions. At this time, the General requests that Leonalis specifically meet him at the docking bay, a military affair of sorts. Sisko would begrudgingly acknowledge, and Leonalis would leave ops and start making his way down. As the Bajoran vessel gets within transporter range, shields, weapons, and transporters for DS9 would go down. The crew looks confused until a random Bajoran officer raises their weapon and yells, "Bajor for Bajorans," and shoots Sisko at point-blank range. Before anyone could react, Bajorans transport into operations and quickly take control. The general sees that Sisko was hit and becomes enraged, stating that they should not have used weapons unless absolutely vital. This would be waved off by Colonel Day, who would then order the nestazine gas be used on all decks but ops. When we come back from black, we see Garak in a Jeffries tube with a knocked out Bashir. Bashir would come to with a start and be calmed down by the tailor. The doctor asks Garak how they got there, and Garak would hold up an object stating that it was a breathing device that he got from a Romulan friend while he was doing some gardening for him. He would also leave a quip that Bashir should probably lose some weight because it took some time getting him into the Jeffries tube. Garak then pulls the officer to an access hatch and shows the promenade. There, we would see a scene reminiscent of what occurred during the Bajoran occupation, just with the Bajorans in charge. Bashir would be confused, stating he doesn't understand. Even though the doctor disagreed with them, the Bajorans just wanted other people gone. Why would they do this? Garak would smile and then say something like, "Dear Doctor, the one thing I know about a cause that demands one race is above others, you start making everyone else less than you are. You stop treating them like they have anything of worth." Garak then leads Bashir to Leonalis, who had been able to get out as well and was found by Garak. They then search for Sisko, finding him in the medical bay in bad condition. This is where Sisko would give the speech we saw before that Leonalis would die for his people because that's the easy way out. The Bajorans needed him to live. They would leave Sisko, and then we would go back to the episode itself for the most part. Garak and Bashir help liberate Dax, Kira, and Miles. Dax and Kira go to the Chamber of Ministers, while Miles, O'Brien, and Leonalis go to meet the General. When asked if he was going to come and confront the General, Garak would say he's a humble tailor and doesn't get involved in all of the political affairs. The General is then confronted and asked why he would allow ghettos of non-Bajorans to occur. The man would be shown what we saw before and be aghast. Colonel Day had kept him in operations, and he didn't know what was occurring. Sisko would arrive, being killed because, well, this is Trek, we have space magic and that can happen, and then it continues with Leonalis giving his life for Sisko. And boom, that is exactly how I would finish this out. Ultimately, I do enjoy this arc, and I think it was well done. I do believe that it got the message across, even if there were some missteps. But all of this is my opinion. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below.